To say it's been a crazy last number of days out in the real world it'd be an understatement. But hopefully all of you watching are doing good, staying healthy, and spending a lot more time doing what we all love to do, and that is game. Unfortunately, because of YouTube's horrendous system that's in place, I can't even say the specific reason for all the chaos, but I do seriously hope all of you are playing the greatest RPG ever made, Raid Shadow. No, I'm just joking around. I'll probably have a dedicated video on that abysmal mobile experience sometime in the near future, but for right now, if you are unaware, just about everything is being canceled. This year's E3 2020 has been cancelled, and honestly, due to the chaotic last 12 months with more and more companies abandoning the costly annual event in favor of pre-recorded announcement shows and the ESA leaking the personal information of thousands of games media members, very good chance that E3 2019 may have been the final E3 for a lot of this games industry, which is no matter what still pretty disappointing, as early June has always kind of been a time of extreme excitement for so many. One can hope that Gamescom continues to grow and hopefully replaces what E3 represented and was for so many. But yeah, all week long, numerous game studios have rightfully told their staff to work from home, and so many gaming events, shows, and conferences have been cancelled. Anyway, the show goes on, and today we are going to break down the latest with this AAA games industry, because while there certainly is this unprecedented global crisis going on, life still goes on, and right now Blizzard is still dealing with the effects of the Warcraft 3 Reforged disaster, with yet another key veteran employee leaving, and one former employee defending modern-day Blizzard Entertainment, and their response to various debacles. New data suggests that both Electronic Arts and Bethesda took a nosedive in quality last year, 2K Games became the latest company to betray fans, a new Activision executive got a huge payday, concerns of a PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X delayed to 2021 are becoming real, and CD Projekt Red offers an update on Cyberpunk 2077, the future of the company, and yet another action that shows that they truly lead by example. So yeah, a loaded video with tons of stuff to go over, but if you do go on to enjoy this content and want to show your support for gaming coverage like this, please consider hitting that like button, subscribing for more, and turning notifications on so you do not miss out on any new videos. Also, I should emphasize this more, but I am on Twitter, very active over there, so consider following me if you haven't already. Nonetheless, even with life going on, things are going to be and already kind of feel different. That's obvious with all the cancellations, delays, and restrictions that we're seeing on all aspects of life right now. But in the context of the video game industry, huge announcements like the next Batman game, the mysterious Harry Potter RPG that was leaked a while ago, and Rocksteady's long-awaited, also mysterious game have lost their reveal event, with E3 2020 being cancelled. There's just a lot of uncertainty in the air. Of course, Warner Brothers will likely come up with some sort of digital announcement event for their upcoming games, but beyond these reveals, analysts are starting to feel concerned for the original plans of launching the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 later this year. DFC Intelligence, a US-based strategic market research and consulting firm, recently released a statement and forecast for next-gen consoles, saying that it expects that the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 to be delayed out of their current holiday 2020 launch, citing widespread global uncertainty about the spread of that. This crisis is likely to have a major short-term impact on the delivery of both systems. There is a strong likelihood one or both systems will not make a 2020 launch. If the systems do launch, supply will likely be constrained and initial pricing could be higher than expected. This is a sentiment shared by Nico Partners senior analyst Daniel Ahmad, who recently said that we could see either limited supply at launch or delayed releases if the crisis continued to affect manufacturing through Q2 2020. But again, nothing is certain right now, and it certainly is a guessing game for how the next number of weeks and months will look like for society. A lot of the time, as we've said in the past, there already is limited supplies at launch, which means that this time around, Sony and or Microsoft either miss out on the precious holiday launch and go with a spring release, or they stick with their original plans. Anyway, for now, we're in mid-March, and Sony actually hasn't even revealed the PlayStation 5 officially yet, which some have to wonder if that could be impacted by our current situation. Now, while Sony thus far is being mostly quiet and still working on their next-gen plans, recently Herman Hulst, the former managing director of Guerrilla Games and now head of worldwide studios at Sony, was interviewed, and interestingly, Holst actually said something that should make PlayStation fans happy. He was asked specifically for the vision of the future for Sony's worldwide studios, and he responded saying, "We're very committed to dedicated hardware as we were before. We're going to continue to do that, and we're very committed to quality exclusives and to strong narrative-driven single-player games. At the same time, we're going to be very open to experimentation, to new ideas, just trying things out to see what works." I think that's also very much a part of the DNA of worldwide studios. Recently, concerns have been growing over Sony's future plans with the PlayStation 5. Specifically, Sony has made clear that they wish to experiment with some first-party live service games, and something in the vein or like Fortnite or Call of Duty for next gen. They have also caught the attention of many, including myself, with a single-player microtransaction-focused patent, so a response like this from Holst does sound a bit more hopeful or reassuring than what we've seen thus far. But what's even better are some of the rumors emerging right now, which include Sony licensing Konami's Silent Hill IP and having Kojima allegedly involved. Currently, these are just rumors, some go much further than just this, but I mean, if Sony could somehow patch up the Konami-Kojima relationship and produce the long-demanded Kojima Silent Hills game for the PlayStation 5, that would be a huge monumental victory, maybe even a miracle, based on everything that has happened. Next though, Blizzard Entertainment is finally attempting to move away from their latest debacle, which was the release of Warcraft 3 Reforged, which actually is now confirmed their worst release by far ever. On OpenCritic, based on 31 critic reviews, the game has an average score of 59 out of 100, with just 7% of critics recommending the game. For what it's worth, that score actually puts it in the neighborhood of the other big live service dumpster fire failures of recent memory, which includes Ghost Recon Breakpoint, Fallout 76, and Anthem. Ouch. Comparing the review scores of Blizzard's most notable games, it really just shows how far this company has fallen, and why so many are nervous for the future, with Activision's greedy influence clearly becoming a major problem in terms of quality and really care. Unfortunately, Blizzard just days ago suffered yet another huge departure, with Overwatch's lead writer Michael Chu exiting from the company. Chu had been with Blizzard for 20 years, and besides his work on Overwatch, he was also known for helping with quest design for World of Warcraft, performing design work on Neverwinter Nights 2, as well as aiding in world design on Diablo 3 and its Reaper of Souls release. The reasoning for Chu's departure is unknown, but as we've seen time and time again with numerous other long-beloved game studios, veteran staff leave once things start to change. Blizzard's founders are now gone, and as Kotaku has revealed in their in-depth reporting, Activision has had a noticeable influence over the once autonomous studio. Of course, again, this is merely speculation, but based on what we've seen from the other game studios like EA's BioWare, this is what happens when there's a culture change and different leadership running the show. But interestingly, according to one former World of Warcraft level designer, John Statz, he doesn't believe Blizzard is different due to the recent changeovers in leadership. In a new AMA on website Wowhead, Statz wrote, "Look at the theories about Blizzard now. People think Blizzard is different now because they've had a changeover. It's just so not true. J. Allen Brack isn't even the CEO, you notice? He's the company's president, but people who don't know the difference cannot be convinced otherwise. J. Allen Brack got a lot of heat for the esports protesting controversy. It's a perfect example of him taking the blame for what was ultimately a lawyer-driven decision. People who weren't in Blizzard's meetings about how Blizzard dealt with the protesters fill in the blanks with theories that this is Jay's new title has changed the company. My book pointed out that employees are the same way. Knowing how to code or paint doesn't mean you understand the games industry. Certainly not at the business level. Most devs don't get out of their seat and walk into the CEO's office and say, hey, I was wondering why we did this. That's something I was comfortable with, and it's why I was able to write the World of Warcraft diary. But I noticed Blizzard employees who didn't do that would often gossip and develop their unsubstantiated conspiracy theories, and I wrote how that negativity poisoned the WoW team during its vanilla days. It was an incredibly contentious atmosphere some days, and all of it was based on tinfoil hat theories. Based on the interviews I've conducted with devs from other companies, it happens to a lot of other studios. For what it's worth, Statz last worked at Blizzard, as far as I've seen, in 2011, and things have definitely changed since he was let go. Importantly, as he mentioned, mention, J. Allen Brack is not CEO of Blizzard, but is only president, and one might wonder why is that? The answer is actually kind of clear. The Activision side, or the parent company, wants to establish control, and they've pretty much achieved that at this point. This is not a conspiracy theory when multiple current and recently former employees are saying that there is a culture change with founder Mike Morhaime gone. Sure, I agree, J. Allen Brack is not to blame for a lot that's happening. The blame is on CEO Bobby Kotick of Activision Blizzard, the parent company. Kotick and his team are responsible for what Blizzard Entertainment is and has become. As one employee noted, Mike Morhaime cared about the community and his employees. He put that above everything else when he served as CEO. But as soon as he was gone, the Activision executives came in with a focus on cutting costs, which led to hundreds losing their jobs. Things have changed, and while J. Allen Brack is not to blame specifically for the Blitzchung mess, his non-apology was still pretty darn pathetic. And yeah, I will blame him for Warcraft 3 Reforged, because that clearly was pushed out early and lacking the quality that so many have come to expect from Blizzard. Also, again, J. Allen Brack had a pretty lousy, pathetic non-apology for the negative reception from both critics and users that Warcraft 3 Reforged garnered. Now, since we are on the subject of Activision Blizzard's greedy nonsense, it was actually recently announced a new individual joining the company's leadership team, receiving a massive salary yet again, which might not be a big deal to most of you, but it should be mentioned because this is a company that regularly shows that they do not value employees or consumers at all. Firing a few hundred developers and hiring a big-time suit for millions of dollars is just another day at Activision Blizzard. Anyway, we proceed next to EA and Bethesda's tanking in quality last year. This has now been confirmed through Metacritic's 10th annual Game Publisher Rankings, which had Electronic Arts tumble all the way down to 13th on the list out of 40, and Bethesda plummeted down to 30th. For EA, Metacritic noted, after ranking in our top 3 a year ago, EA also saw a more than 2-point drop in its average Metacritic score in 2019 thanks to a release slate that included the publisher's first negatively reviewed game in years, the feature-poor Switch version of FIFA 20, which is basically little more than a rebadge of FIFA 19. Other disappointments include the high-profile multiplayer dud Anthem, indie Sea of Solitude from the publisher's EA Originals label, and a lackluster installment of Need for Speed, while EA's top 2019 highlight was its well-received Fortnite competitor Apex Legends, which faces increased competition today with the arrival of Call of Duty Warzone. As I said last year, Respawn Entertainment really has been the best purchase they've made in a long time. Respawn has kept this company rising with the surprise hit of Apex Legends and the massive success of their single-player focused Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Everything else, though, has either been mediocre or a disaster. BioWare's Anthem was a gigantic mess and mistake that is right now basically dead, but being revamped for the future. We'll see how that turns out. Now, for Bethesda, Metacritic noted a Switch port of Doom 3 and a pair of Elder Scrolls DLC titles were Bethesda's only 2019 highlights. And yeah, that's really about it, because Rage 2 disappointed, Wolfenstein Cyberpilot was abysmal, Wolfenstein Young Blood was a soulless disaster, and the Elder Scrolls Blades was a good old mobile cash grab advertised as something else. Could also mention the Elder Scrolls Legends, which was basically shut down. Now, even though it was not released in 2019, although it certainly hogged up headlines throughout the year, Fallout 76 and Bethesda's thoughts on the game's early days continues to surprise me. As we discussed recently, Bethesda VP Pete Hines gave us a very interesting interview in which he tried defending a lot of the company's crappy actions. Like, Hines argued the company has not actually lied, things have just changed internally, which still makes not delivering on a promise a lie. Like that Fallout 76 would be cosmetic only. At least in my eyes, that's a blatant lie. But not according to Bethesda, I guess. But there actually was one specific clip or moment from the Pete Hines Kinda Funny's Greg Miller interview that I actually missed and I wanted to quickly circle back to, because it's Hines being asked why Fallout 76 was not delayed like Doom Eternal.
Why didn't Fallout 76 get delayed? Because you're saying, like, you know, it's the relief of, okay, cool, it's not ready. Is that a kind of game that you guys felt needed to be out and learn in real time?
I think it was just more, it was not, we didn't see the same things that on Doom Eternal. It was much more clear, as it was on Fallout 76, where it just, it wasn't quite as obvious, like this thing needs more time. Now, you could argue whatever you want, what you should have, and so forth. Like,
I'm not here to argue.
I mean, Yes, going back, yes.
Hindsight's 2020.
Yes, I wish we had known and would have, but every game is different.
Of course.
Yeah.
So as I've been saying, I don't really buy this argument that Bethesda didn't see the problems until release with Fallout 76. What I think happened is that Bethesda thought that they could just release the game buggy, broken, and unfinished, loaded with a bunch of microtransactions, because they assumed the Fallout and even Bethesda Game Studios brand, no matter what, would sell a crapload of copies, regardless of the actual quality. Well, they were obviously wrong, and of course they now regret pushing out arguably the biggest live service dumpster fire gaming has ever seen. It's just difficult to imagine a scenario in which the problems with Fallout 76 were not obvious. Hines can say they weren't, but I just don't buy it. Now additionally, at the recent PAX East fan event, speaking to GamesIndustry.biz, a Bethesda developer had this to say in the game's early days. There was quite a lot that worked at launch. If you're a person who liked exploration, for example, from our traditional games, it was possibly one of the best worlds to explore that we've ever had. It was just huge, full of stories and stuff like that. But there was a large portion of our audience that wanted people. They wanted an emotional connection. And if you know everyone is dead and you come across a holotape from someone, it loses that hope that you might meet that person and help them out. I think what we learned from launch was that core combat was fun, it was great to explore, there was a lot to do. But what we needed for a lot of our audience was to bring the humanity back, which essentially Bethesda is realizing what we all feared and even thought of before release. Great. Better now than ever, I suppose. But in some other Bethesda-related news, the company has been caught in yet another lie, although this time the blame mostly goes to the disastrous streaming platform of Google Stadia. See, Doom Eternal was for the longest time advertised as true 4K on Stadia, with id Software's boss Marty Stratton saying at GDC 2019, when Stadia was first unveiled, that if you're gonna prove to the world that you can stream games from the cloud, what better proof than Doom? We couldn't be happier to be bringing Doom Eternal to Stadia and are thrilled to announce that the game will be capable of running at true 4K resolution with HDR color at an unrelenting 60 frames per second. That led to a huge round of applause, but here in present day we're now finding out via id Software themselves that will actually not be the case. Unfortunately, this is not the first time or probably the last time Google Stadia will end up breaking a promise. We've seen this episode before with Red Dead Redemption 2, a good notable example, which also was originally advertised as featuring true 4K, but that was also confirmed to not be the case. In all honesty though, this is just yet another bad luck for a streaming platform which, at least up to this point, has really only disappointed, and that may spell trouble as more companies invest in their own streaming platforms in the years to come. Speaking of streaming platforms, Nvidia's GeForce Now suffered yet another loss, with 2K Games becoming the latest company to ditch the platform and anger gamers. As I mentioned, when Bethesda and Activision Blizzard jumped ship suddenly, many individuals purchased games on this platform from these publishers knowing that their current hardware could not handle said game, but streaming software allowed them to do so. Now though, these individuals are left behind with no way to play their purchased games, and that is again the issue with 2K Games abandoning this platform. Like I've said before, these companies are being greedy with this decision, looking for a big payday which likely will lead to the death of GeForce Now, which as far as I've seen is a pretty decent streaming platform. Thankfully though, not all game companies are jumping ship, as both CD Projekt Red and Epic Games have made commitments to GeForce Now, which in my opinion is yet another pro-consumer action from both of these companies. But 2K Games doing something anti-consumer is not surprising, considering that I've always put them right up there with the EAs and Activision Blizzards of this industry in terms of the BS. That's also why them gaining some rights to make NFL non-simulation games doesn't really have me hopeful we'll see anything better than what Electronic Arts has produced. It's very likely 2K Games will just make NFL the online casino as they've done with NBA 2K. But finally we move on to our last topic, and that is CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077, which, as we have found out via CDPR's studio head Adam Badowski, the game has been submitted to age rating agencies around the world, and they are currently focused on polishing technical aspects aspects and playtesting it. Basically, it certainly sounds like Cyberpunk 2077 is near completion at this point, and even with our current world situation, the game will be ready for its September release. Furthermore, CDPRs also confirmed pre-orders for Cyberpunk 2077 are higher than The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt at this same point in time. They soon will have a team set up to begin work on their next single-player adventure, which very likely will be the next Witcher game. We'll talk more in depth on that in a future video I'm actually working on right now. But finally, something that is a big win in my opinion is that reviewers will get the game weeks before the release date with embargo set for weekend prior to the release. Now, why do I think this is a big deal? It means we won't see rushed reviews, and it will allow reviewers to take their time with the experience. This is something that not a lot of publishers do. Whenever I've received early copies for major releases, it's always been at most just a few days. And yes, I plan to review Cyberpunk 2077, so I of course applaud this decision. Anyway, right now things definitely are strange, and I again want to reinforce I hope everyone is safe, healthy, and taking the necessary precautions. At the very least, this hopefully will be a time for many of you to spend more time gaming, watching legacy Killer HD videos, and or experience some titles that you wouldn't have entertained if there hadn't been this current situation. But yeah, we went over a ton of gaming news today, and I want to know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or if you found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I do not always get into video form, so do make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games. And again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.